Welcome to another video. Welcome to Assetto Corsa Evo and its early access program, which kicked off January the 16th, 2025. What do I think of it? Is it any good? Is it worth your money? Should you get it now? Should you wait? Spoilers, we're going to get into it straight from the off. Disclaimer, these are my opinions and my opinions only after my experience of spending the first 3 hours in the game yesterday. You really should try it for yourself, make your own mind up. Even if you go and watch 100 different videos on YouTube, everyone's going to have their own opinion, everyone has their own expectations. And let's start there with expectations. Based on my expectations, do I think today at £26.39 British pounds sterling, it is worth the investment? Yes, I do. I say yes I do based on the full and clear understanding that I do not expect a fully feature complete game. I don't expect it to work without bugs. I don't expect it to do anything really other than load up and be functional. I don't expect a lot of content. I don't expect the content to work all the time. I fully expect the game to crash to desktop. This is early access. Dependent on your previous experience of early access, your expectations may be different. If you've never had any experience of early access, you might confuse it with a game demo, where it's pretty much feature complete. They're just working through the final QA before they release the game to the mass market. That is not what this is. Early access to a game is either alpha or beta. And early access is a funding model that allows people to play the game before it's finished, fully expecting that it will involve the game being in its very early stages of development. That's when it's still being tested for bugs, new features, and it's often usually only made available to a small group of people. It might also be in beta access stage, where it's a game that again is in a development stage, but it's a later development stage. So it's being tested for bugs again, other issues, but it's often made available to a much larger group of people. We should never ever forget what it's for. It's there for game developers to raise funds to fund the development of the game, and players who participate in the early access can then get involved knowing that they're participating in that early access to help the developers debug the game, to provide feedback, and maybe to get access to special materials that will come later, incentives. Based on that, my expectations are on the floor. The thing I wanted to work day one was VR support. There have been games that have come out in the last 12 to 18 months that we knew had VR as a feature that was supposed to come in early access, but latterly a development decision was taken to have the game released into early access without the VR support. There have been other games that were supposed to have triple support at launch, and again, a development decision was taken and they launched without triple support. For me, a big tick, a big win day one was the VR support is functional, it's working. Does it need development? Of course it does. We're in early access. We might be in pre-alpha rather than alpha, but I'll come back to that later. But it works. It's there as a game option. You hit start or you hit play and you get the Steam window pop up asking whether you want to play in 2D or in OpenXR. Watching the video up until this point, you can see what the visual quality, the fidelity looks like in 2D. As you get into the game, you can see that there are still a few issues to be tweaked out with regards to things like shadows, but we're at early access stage. That's either going to require some tweaking of graphic settings or it's actually some optimization in the game that is going to be required. I'll allow you to pause the video, go back and pause it. You can look at the entire development roadmap. You can see what we were supposed to get day one at launch, which includes the full complement of cars that you see in the garage, but weren't in the garage. In 3 hours of finally, and I say finally, releasing into early access, Kunos already had to release an update to unlock the cars that were, for some reason, inaccessible to us. To also see is that the game remains in an offline status. No amount of entering your profile details and submitting would get the game to go into online mode. 2 was addressed in that initial fix. You can now put in your profile details and it will turn to online. However, I'm not 100% confident that it remains in that online status. I've seen it go to online, then flick back to offline again. But that again can be seen as a positive. That can demonstrate how quickly the developers want to address any issues that are raised, because that was within the first 3 hours. The game did release at least an hour later than was scheduled. However, that again isn't the biggest deal because we've all been there at patch cycle date for our favorite game. only to be sat there for hours as the servers wait to come back online. So let's see if Kunos can maintain that rate of hitting release deadlines or timelines within a tolerance of no more than 60 minutes. If it starts to slip to 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, maybe we'll come back and change our opinion. And again, we all knew that there were going to be hot fixes on day one. They were probably there before they were ready to go to release, but the decision was taken, let's get it live and let's hot fix it as soon as we can afterwards. You were able to jump into the game modes of practice session or quick race. You had the Mount Panorama, Suzuka, Imola, Brands Hatch and Laguna Seca tracks available, 4 versions for Suzuka, and they worked straight off the jump. You could select them, you could set up a session and you could jump in. If you look through the video, you'll see the extensive option of bindable controls that you have in the settings, and setting up the car controls, I should say, was quite intuitive. I did have to go back and invert the axes, but it was easy to get in straight away, get my wheel set up. And if you prepare yourself by downloading Kunos' guide to setting up your wheelbase, if you have a direct drive wheel, you can have already set your profilers settings on your application if you've got one on the desktop before you even get into the game, and then set up your force feedback within the game. What I did find was that the reference settings that they had for the Fanatec wheel, set for a 7Nm wheel, had the force feedback a little dull, a little soft for me because I have the 9Nm CSL. When I went into the game, I was expecting to see that there might be a VR profile for video settings, but I didn't see one. You could change it between a default, low, medium, high, ultra, or go to custom settings. I set it to high just to see what it would be like getting into game. And here's where there are pros and cons. So that shadow issue that we were having in the main menu lobby persisted when getting into the car. Looking into the pit garage, I liked the fact that there were animated figures, but you'll see the shadow issue that was persisting as I moved my head up and down. At this point, I could hold my head and the 2 people at the back of the garage disappeared into silhouettes. And that shadow issue persisted throughout my play session. It didn't matter when I then changed the graphic settings to ultra, the shadow still had this issue going on. And when in the game menu again, you could see all of the aliasing issues at the edge of any of the squared off or straight edges on the UI and menu. Another thing that was quite interesting was looking at the skybox, looking at the clouds. It looked like the clouds in the foreground and the clouds in the background were on 2 completely different planets. They were traveling in different directions. In fact, it looked like something out of Independence Day. It looked like some manifestation was trying to materialize in the sky. However, what I also noticed was I didn't see in the controller settings an option to lock the wheel rotation to whatever was the rotation of the particular car you're sitting in, but I might have missed that. What I found was I could turn beyond the lock and my wheel continued turning. But again, that might be something I missed. It might be something that needs to be added to in an implementation update later, but it's very likely just something that I missed. The track itself, when driving out of the pits or loading up into the pit garage, the colors, the textures, everything reminded me of what we have in Assetto Corsa Competizione, but with a better quality in VR. All of the walls, the awnings, the signage, everything at the side of the track, like the rumble strips, the curves, or the AstroTurf, everything seems to be coming from the same color palette of Assetto Corsa Competizione. And we know that this is a completely new game engine, so it's not just a cut and paste, maybe it's just a preference that the developers have. It was really nice to see the weather transitions as well in the dynamic weather. That hazy effect, that low ground fog, that mist that rolls in, looks brilliant. It looks really, really good. What I'm not as impressed with at this point in time is the rain effects. So the effects on the windscreen, the effects on the side windows, or the fact that the rain falling, I can't really discern well at this point in time. It seems to be falling straight down, and I don't see it having any impacts on the ground. Now they may be there, the splatters, the splashback, I just didn't see them. I didn't test long enough. The track gets nice and dark as it gets saturated with water. I didn't get to the point where I had standing water, so I don't know what that's like, and I didn't get to the point where I could test out a dry or wet line. But it was nice to see that you could definitely see that there was rubber on the track. You could see the path and tracks that cars had taken previously As the track got wetter and got darker, the track had a nice texture to it. The flora, whether that's the grass or the trees, they all look nice as well. They look very Assetto Corsa Competizione. The grass looked good, it had good detail, as did the dirt that the grass was in. The colour of it looks really good. And when getting up close, because I went off track multiple times, it looks good up close as well. However, it wasn't easy to ignore the shadow effects. And again, I don't know whether that's shadows, I don't know whether it's some other graphical artifact going on, but I just couldn't ignore it. And again, every time I looked at the rain on the windscreen or the side windows, I wasn't impressed yet. Context to that yet not being impressed, I would still say that the rain effects in Assetto Corsa 1 with the custom shader patch knocks it out the park. It's so immersive. The water looks wet. It looks like it's running down a windscreen. And I was hoping that day one early access Assetto Corsa Evo would have the same level of quality that we can elicit from Assetto Corsa 1 with the custom shaders patch and all of the PP filters. When it comes to the driving experience, I again have to reserve judgment because I didn't spend a lot of time tweaking the force feedback settings. I wanted to make sure I was doing my initial impressions, my initial laps in the recommended reference settings that Kunos had shared. So I accept that it felt light to me, but the settings, the baseline settings for the Fanatec wheel were based on 7 Newton meters. I'm running 9 Newton meters, and that small difference might be what made it feel lighter to me. I know that I'm going to want to go and add in a bit more force. Also, the damper settings and intensity settings aren't the same as what I would normally run. So I'm definitely going to have to run a different profile for Assetto Corsa Evo if what Kunos have suggested is the route to take that I need to build on. But again, as you look at the menu in the VR session, when you come back to the menu, it looks horrible. It needs a lot of work. But I don't know if that's something that I need to go and find a fix for, tweaking the settings. It shouldn't be, because this is now at Ultra, or if it's something that Kunos need to address in another subsequent update. That became the theme of my initial session, that 3-hour session. In-game, in the car, inside the cockpit, chef's kiss. It looks beautiful. Yes, the shadows still need a little bit of work, but it looks really, really good. Out of the game, in the UI of the menu, that's where it's a bit of a mess. And also it does this thing where if you have the menu up, the UI in your face, and you're moving your head around, you seem to induce lag. You need to get rid of the menu. You need to be in the game, in the car, about to leave the pit for the VR to track properly. But the visuals, the quality of the visuals in the car and the texture, brilliant. Sitting in this Ford Cosworth, it didn't look like a nice plastic, shiny, brand new, just got off the production line car. It had aging effects. Right now, you might not be able to see it unless you zoom in, but I'm looking at the edge of the air vent and it has like scuff marks as though someone's hand has been rubbing across it over the course of time. And when I, in a short moment, look to the right and look at the multimedia display, the corner of the display shows scuff marks as well, as though it's been caught by something like maybe a watch or a bracelet, but just over time, it's been tarnished. It isn't pristine, it isn't perfect. And it's the same with the seat pan of the seat in the passenger side of the car. The edge of the seat where the back of your calves or the back of your knees comes into contact have an aged weather effect to it. And I really, really liked it. You could tell that someone had put in some time and effort and attention into that detail. But again, as you looked out the window, as I looked right, you see again that aliasing issue, you see the issue of the shadows. That's the contrast. It's that pleasure pain, bittersweet. The level of detail in the car, the actual car asset, brilliant. And the fact that you can turn around, I should say, not over, but turn and look over your shoulder and you can see it's a full car, there's a back seat. It's not like those games where they only do the passenger and the driver's seat. That gives us hope, that gives us promise. Yeah, The driving experience feels much more akin to driving in Assetto Corsa 1 than driving in Assetto Corsa Competizione. It has that familiar feeling where you can tell you're sat in a production car, in a family saloon car. You can feel that your ride height is higher than a GT car. You can feel that the tires that you're on are road tires. They don't have that really low profile feel, or you know how you get that feel that you're on run flats in some of the GT cars. It doesn't feel like that. It's that familiar feeling that you had in Assetto Corsa where you could tell the tires that I'm on have a taller sidewall. There's a lot more flex in them as we put weight on each corner of the car, and as you go through a corner or you enter into the braking zone, the car gets destabilized on its suspension. You can feel that it's not on rock solid rigid race suspension. You can feel that this is, as I said, it's a production passenger car. So feel the weight shifting. So coming down the Conrod straight, when you got to the chase and you at high speed put steering locking, you could feel the weight shifting. What I couldn't quite get was the sense that I could feel the contact patch of each of the 4 individual tyres on the road. But again, that might well be I need to go and tweak the force feedback settings, or I need to wait for an update. I don't know. I can't make a judgment at this point in time. What was also interesting to see was the difference in the behavior of the AI. So this is Brands Hatch. The difficulty for the AI is put up to 97%. I tried to put it to 100%, but it seems to think that I put it to 97%. And as you can see, it looks like they're follow the leader on a roller coaster or a train. They're all running the same line in track, connected nose to tail. It doesn't look like the AI is doing any racing. It looks like they're just doing follow the leader. Also really easy to race, so at 97% it didn't take long for me to just cruise up to them and start passing them. The reason I'm behind them at this point in time is because I was looking around, taking in the game. However, same settings, different track, the AI was insane. This is Laguna Seca, same 97% difficulty, and they were racing each other like, I was getting rear-ended. You can watch right now. They're racing each other like it's lap 1, turn 1 in a low split, rookie split, or a first split race in an iRacing World Tour event. And I don't know what the difference was. I don't know if it was just because it was a different track. I don't know if it was because it was a different, set of cars that were on track. I don't know. Is it that it thinks that the Mazda or the Miata or whatever it's going to be called, is it the S2000, that everyone driving those are nice and docile, but everyone that's driving, look, they're just crazy. People driving a GTI are a little bit more boy racer. I don't know. All I know was it was a complete and utter departure from what I'd experienced at Brands Hatch, same difficulty setting. And what I also noticed was the skybox, the clouds seemed to take a lap or 2 laps to get through that weird manifestation thing they were doing until it settled down and you looked at the sky and thought, yeah, that looks fine, that looks good. This is a personal thing. When I looked at the in-game HUD, the UI, I was like, I'm not sure I like this. So when I say I'm not sure I like this, not that it's poor quality or anything like that, because it looks very familiar to what we see in other games, right? It looks extremely familiar to what we see in the HUD in Le Mans Ultimate. But I think I liked and preferred, the HUD or the UI that we had in Assetto Corsa. It was less intrusive. So I think that I would be very much inclined to turn this off if I was racing. This was same number of cars, same graphics details at Suzuka, and you can see it turned into stop motion. Now, it wasn't as bad as this for me in the actual game, but I still knew that there was some element of lag taking place. I didn't know it was this bad. This is what it looked like to people watching the stream, and this is what it looked like on the VOD of the local recording. Now, I don't know if this was Assetto Corsa Evo, or if it was the fact that Windows decided it would be a perfect time to download the next update, and there was also an updated hotfix being released for Assetto Corsa Evo. I don't know if it was any of those 3 things, or if it was just my system having a moment, or my ISP having a moment. I don't know. However, everybody said that the audio in the stream was still fine. It was just the visuals were taking a hit. And that kind of summarizes my experience of Assetto Corsa Evo. I would still get it. It's £26.39. It can sit in my Steam library whilst it's being developed. I can either actively participate in that development or stay racing Le Mans Ultimate and have my fun and feel there. However, for that price, knowing what the game is going to become, knowing that it is going to be the natural successor to Assetto Corsa, it's an early investment, it's a small investment, it's something that will support Kunos to get the game to where we want it to be. And the fact, as I said, that VR worked day one, it obviously needs improving. Yeah, I think it's worth it. But if you don't want to be part of that journey, if you don't want to be here whilst it's inconsistent in performance, whilst not everybody gets the same sort of results, whilst the game has bugs where it's laggy, then yeah, maybe buy it, leave it, don't touch it, or don't buy it at all. Maybe buy it, use the 2 hours to get your own opinion, then refund it, but don't expect it to be brilliant, don't expect it to be polished. It is early access. Kunos aren't pretending about that, they're being transparent about that. But do I think it's worth it? Yes, I do. What's your experience been? What are your opinions? If you'd like to see the full session of all of the testing that I went through, all of the trials and tribulations, I'll add a link and add it as the end card of the video. And what I'd say is, in that entire 3.5 hours of testing, I never got one crash to desktop. That's a huge tick as well. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.